The scorching summer sun had already climbed high in the Texas sky when Virginia Porter first set eyes on San Elizario, her hopes as vast as the endless horizon stretching before her. She never imagined that within a week she would be fighting for her life, locked away in darkness, nor that her salvation would come in the form of a rugged cowboy with eyes the color of a thunderstorm. Virginia adjusted her bonnet as the stagecoach rattled along the dusty road, finally slowing as they approached the outskirts of town. The year was 1878, and at 22, Virginia had left behind the comforts of Boston society to accept a position as a schoolteacher in this remote corner of Texas. Her father's recent passing had left her with little choice but to seek employment, and the advertisement in the Boston Chronicle had seemed like providence. "Last stop, San Elizario," the driver called, pulling back on the reins. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of a weathered building with a sign that read, "San Elizario Hotel." Virginia gathered her skirts and stepped down, her gaze sweeping across the main street. Men in dusty clothes and wide-brimmed hats milled about, some casting curious glances her way. Women in simple frontier dresses hurried along with baskets, and children darted between buildings, playing with hoops and sticks. "Need help with your trunks, miss?" The stagecoach driver was already pulling her luggage down. "Yes, thank you. I'm staying at the hotel until I can find more permanent accommodations." As the driver carried her trunks inside, Virginia couldn't help but notice the three men watching her from across the street. They stood outside the saloon, sharing a bottle between them. One man, tall and lean with a scar running down his cheek, tipped his hat mockingly in her direction. A shiver ran down her spine despite the heat. Inside the hotel, Virginia approached the front desk where an elderly man with spectacles was writing in a ledger. "Good afternoon, I'm Virginia Porter, the new schoolteacher. I believe a room has been arranged for me." The old man peered at her over his spectacles. "Ah, Miss Porter, we've been expecting you. I'm Harold Wilson, the proprietor." He rang a small bell. "My wife will show you to your room." A plump woman with gray hair appeared and led Virginia upstairs to a simple but clean room with a single bed, a washstand, and a small writing desk. "Dinner's at 6 sharp," Mrs. Wilson informed her. "Town council meetings tomorrow morning. They're eager to meet you." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I appreciate your hospitality." After the woman left, Virginia unpacked her belongings and sat on the edge of the bed. Exhaustion from her long journey washed over her, but excitement stirred in her chest. This was her chance to build something new. The next morning, Virginia made her way to the town hall, a modest wooden building in the center of San Elizario. Inside, 6 men sat around a table, conversation halting as she entered. "Gentlemen, may I present Miss Virginia Porter," announced Mayor Edwards, a portly man with an impressive mustache. "Miss Porter, these are our town council members." The men stood, offering polite greetings, but one remained seated, the man with the scar she had noticed outside the saloon. "And this is Harold Blackwood, our local businessman," the mayor added with noticeable hesitation. Blackwood's eyes traveled slowly over Virginia, his smile revealing a gold tooth. "Pleasure, Miss Porter. You're certainly prettier than old Mrs. Jenkins." "Maybe the boys will actually attend school now." Virginia forced a smile. "I believe education has merits beyond the appearance of the teacher, Mr. Blackwood." Blackwood laughed. "Spirited too. You'll find that spirit doesn't last long out here in the West, Miss Porter." Before Virginia could respond, the door to the town hall swung open, and a tall figure filled the doorframe. The man who entered wore a dusty denim shirt, chaps over his pants, and a worn cowboy hat that he removed as he stepped inside. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck, and a several-day growth of beard shadowed his jaw. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice deep and rough as if unused to much conversation. "Had trouble with the new stallion." "Ah, Zachary," Mayor Edwards said. "Come in. This is our new school teacher, Miss Virginia Porter. Miss Porter, this is Zachary Ryder. He owns the Starlight Ranch outside of town." Zachary Ryder's storm-gray eyes met Virginia's, and something passed between them, recognition of some sort, though they had never met. He nodded once, a curt greeting. "Madam," he said simply. Virginia nodded back. "Mr. Ryder." As the meeting progressed, Virginia learned that the school had been without a teacher for nearly 6 months since the previous teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, had returned east after her husband's passing. The schoolhouse needed repairs, supplies were limited, and attendance had been sporadic at best. "I'll need a few days to assess the condition of the schoolhouse and prepare lessons," Virginia told the council, "but I intend to begin classes next Monday." "The children need discipline," Blackwood interjected. "Run wild too long." "Children need understanding as well as discipline, Mr. Blackwood," Virginia countered. "I intend to provide both." Blackwood's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. After the meeting, as Virginia prepared to leave, Zachary Ryder approached her. "Miss Porter," he said, his voice low. "A word of advice, watch yourself around Blackwood." Virginia was taken aback by his directness. "Is there something I should know, Mr. Ryder?" "Just that he owns half the town, and thinks he owns the other half too, including the people." His gaze flicked toward Blackwood, who was deep in conversation with the mayor. "He doesn't like being challenged, especially by a woman." Before Virginia could respond, Zachary placed his hat back on his head and strode out, leaving her to ponder his warning. Over the next few days, Virginia threw herself into preparing the schoolhouse. It was a simple one-room building with rows of benches and desks, a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and a teacher's desk at the front. The walls needed whitewashing, the floor required sweeping, and several windows had broken panes. As she worked to clean the space, various townspeople stopped by to introduce themselves and offer assistance. Mrs. Wilson brought sandwiches and lemonade. The blacksmith's wife, Sarah Thompson, came with her 3 children and helped wash the windows. Even the mayor's wife appeared with a basket of fresh apples for Virginia's desk. On the 3rd day, as Virginia was arranging books on the shelves, she heard the creak of the schoolhouse door. Turning, she saw Zachary Ryder standing in the entrance, hat in hand. "Mr. Ryder," she greeted him, surprised. "What brings you to the schoolhouse?" "Heard you were fixing it up," he said, stepping inside and glancing around. "Thought you might need some help with the repairs." Virginia gestured to the broken window panes and the wobbly legs of her desk. "I would appreciate any assistance you can offer, though I don't want to impose on your time." Zachary moved to examine the desk, testing its stability. "Not an imposition. I've got the tools in my wagon. Won't take long." For the next 2 hours, Zachary worked silently, repairing the desk, fixing the windows, and even oiling the hinges of the door that had squeaked incessantly. Virginia continued organizing books and supplies, occasionally stealing glances at the taciturn Cowboy. "Why did you come?" she finally asked as he hammered a nail into a loose floorboard. He paused, considering her question. "Town needs a school. Kids need learning." "Do you have children who will be attending?" Virginia asked. A shadow crossed his face. "No, no family. I see." They fell into silence again until Zachary stood, dusting off his hands. "That should do it." "Thank you, Mr. Ryder. You've been most helpful," he nodded, reaching for his hat. "Call me Zach, everyone does." "Then you must call me Virginia." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Virginia," he said, as if testing the feel of her name. Then, with a tip of his hat, he was gone. The following Monday, 23 children of various ages gathered in the schoolhouse for their first day of classes. Virginia found them eager to learn, though somewhat unruly after months without formal education. She divided them into groups based on age and ability, setting the older ones to help the younger ones while she moved between groups. By the end of the first week, Virginia had settled into a routine. She would rise early, have breakfast at the hotel, then walk to the schoolhouse. After school, she would prepare lessons for the following day before returning to the hotel for dinner. It was during her second week in San Elizario that Harold Blackwood approached her again. Virginia was leaving the schoolhouse late one afternoon when she found him waiting outside, leaning against a hitching post. "Miss Porter," he greeted her, straightening. "Working hard, I see." "Mr. Blackwood," Virginia acknowledged with a nod. "The children are making progress." "I'm sure they are. I wanted to invite you to dinner at my establishment, as a welcome to our little town." Virginia hesitated. While she didn't wish to be rude, Zachary's warning echoed in her mind. "That's very kind, but I'm quite busy with lesson preparations." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "It wasn't really a request, Miss Porter. I own the building you're teaching in, and the hotel where you're staying. It would be unwise to refuse my hospitality." A chill ran down Virginia's spine despite the warm evening air. "I see. Then I would be honored to accept your invitation. When did you have in mind?" "Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. I'll send my carriage for you." With that, he tipped his hat and strolled away, leaving Virginia with a sense of unease. That evening at the hotel dining room, Virginia spotted Zachary Ryder at a corner table, eating alone. After hesitating briefly, she approached him. "May I join you, Mr. Ryder?" she asked. He looked up, surprise evident in his gray eyes, but he nodded and gestured to the empty chair across from him. Virginia sat, arranging her skirts. "I wanted to thank you again for your help with the schoolhouse. The children are enjoying the repaired facilities." "Good," he said simply, taking a sip from his coffee cup. After a moment of silence, Virginia lowered her voice. "Mr. Blackwood invited me to dinner tomorrow evening at his establishment. He made it clear refusal wasn't an option." Zachary's jaw tightened. "Don't go." "He suggested there would be consequences if I didn't accept." "There'll be worse consequences if you do." Zachary leaned forward. "Blackwood doesn't invite ladies to dinner out of hospitality. His establishment isn't just a saloon, it's a brothel too." Virginia felt her cheeks flush. "I see. If you go there, folks will talk." "Your reputation, I understand," Virginia interrupted. "But I can't simply refuse. He made it clear he has influence over my position here." Zachary considered this, his brow furrowed. "Tell him you already accepted an invitation from me." Virginia blinked in surprise. "Pardon, tomorrow evening. I'll take you to dinner at Maria's. It's a respectable place. Meet me here at 6:30. "But that would be a lie," Virginia protested weakly. Zachary's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "Not if I'm actually inviting you." "Which I am." Virginia felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with anxiety. "Very well, Mr. Ryder. I accept your invitation." The next morning, Virginia encountered Blackwood outside the general store. Before he could speak, she approached him with a pleasant smile. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm afraid I must decline your kind invitation for this evening. I've already accepted an engagement with Mr. Ryder." Blackwood's expression darkened. "Ryder? What business do you have with him?" "Mr. Ryder has been very helpful with repairs to the schoolhouse. When he invited me to dinner to discuss further improvements, I could hardly refuse." "Ryder's a nobody," Blackwood spat. "A rancher with a small spread and big ideas. "You'd do better to align yourself with me in this town, Miss Porter." Virginia maintained her composure. "I've made a commitment, Mr. Blackwood. Perhaps another time." As she turned to leave, Blackwood caught her arm. "This isn't wise, Miss Porter. I don't appreciate being disappointed." Virginia pulled her arm free. "Nor do I appreciate being threatened, Mr. Blackwood. Good day." She walked away, heart pounding, aware of his glare boring into her back. That evening, Virginia took extra care with her appearance, selecting a blue dress that complemented her eyes and arranging her auburn hair in a simple but elegant style. She told herself it was merely to present a respectable appearance for dinner, but she couldn't deny a flutter of anticipation at the thought of an evening with the mysterious Zachary Ryder. He was waiting for her in the hotel lobby, hat in hand, dressed in clean clothes, a white shirt, dark vest, and trousers. He'd trimmed his beard and combed his hair, and Virginia was struck by how handsome he looked when not covered in dust from the range. "Miss Porter," he greeted her with a slight bow, "you look lovely." "Thank you, Mr. Ryder, and thank you for this rescue." He offered his arm. "It's my pleasure." Maria's restaurant was a small adobe building on the edge of town, run by a Mexican woman who had lived in San Elizario for decades. The interior was warm and inviting, with colorful woven cloths on the tables and the aroma of spices in the air. As they took their seats, Virginia noticed several townspeople watching them with interest. "I believe we're causing a stir," she whispered. Zachary glanced around. "Small towns, people talk. Let them." Throughout dinner, Virginia was surprised to discover that Zachary, though not overly talkative, was well-read and thoughtful. He spoke of his ranch, the challenges of raising cattle in the harsh Texas climate, and his hopes for expanding his herd. "How did you come to own Starlight Ranch?" Virginia asked as they enjoyed coffee after their meal. A shadow crossed Zachary's face. "Won it in a card game, if you can believe that. Previous owner bet more than he could afford to lose." "That seems fortunate for you." "Not really. It was run down, barely surviving. Took 5 years of hard work to make it profitable." He paused, studying her. "What brought you to San Elizario? Most Eastern ladies wouldn't dream of coming out here." Virginia traced the rim of her coffee cup. "My father passed away last winter, left behind more debts than assets. I needed employment, and the position here offered room and board along with a modest salary." "I'm sorry about your father." "Thank you. He was a good man, just not very practical with finances." She smiled wryly. "I suppose I'm more practical by necessity." As they walked back to the hotel, the streets quiet under a canopy of stars, Virginia felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced since arriving in San Elizario. "Thank you for a lovely evening, Mr. Ryder," she said as they reached the hotel entrance. "Zach," he reminded her. "And it was my pleasure, Virginia." Their eyes met, and for a moment Virginia thought he might reach for her hand. Instead, he tipped his hat and stepped back. "Good night," he said softly. "Good night, Zach." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Virginia felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. But beneath that warmth lay a current of unease. She knew that Harold Blackwood was not a man to cross, and she had done exactly that. The next morning, Virginia arrived at the schoolhouse to find a notice nailed to the door. In bold letters, it announced that due to necessary renovations, the school would be closed indefinitely. The notice bore the signature of Harold Blackwood, identified as the property owner. Virginia tore down the notice just as the first students began to arrive with their parents. "What's happening, Miss Porter?" asked Sarah Thompson, the blacksmith's wife. Virginia forced a smile. "A misunderstanding, Mrs. Thompson. Classes will continue as scheduled." But as the children settled into their lessons, The door burst open and Harold Blackwood strode in, flanked by two burly men. "I believe you saw the notice, Miss Porter," he said, his voice dangerously smooth. "This building is closed for renovations." Virginia stood tall behind her desk. "There's nothing wrong with this building, Mr. Blackwood. The renovations were completed last week." "I disagree, and as the owner, my assessment is what matters." He turned to the children. "School's dismissed. Go on home." The children looked uncertainly between Virginia and Blackwood. "The children will stay," Virginia declared. "Your grievance is with me, not with them." Blackwood's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, Miss Porter." "The mistake was thinking you could bully me because I refused your invitation." A murmur ran through the room as parents exchanged glances. "Get the children out," Blackwood ordered his men. Sarah Thompson stepped forward. "You've no right, Harold. The town council approved Miss Porter's appointment." "And I own the building," Blackwood snapped. "Now get your brats and go, or there'll be consequences for everyone." Reluctantly, the parents began gathering their children, casting apologetic glances at Virginia. "This isn't over," Virginia told Blackwood as the room emptied. "You're right about that," he replied with a cold smile. "In fact, it's just beginning." After everyone had left, Blackwood approached Virginia's desk. "You chose the wrong ally, Miss Porter. Ryder can't help you now." "This isn't about Mr. Ryder. This is about your wounded pride." Blackwood leaned closer. "No one says no to me in this town. No one. Especially not some Eastern schoolmarm who doesn't know her place." "My place is teaching these children," Virginia retorted, refusing to be intimidated despite the fear curling in her stomach. "Not anymore." Blackwood straightened. "You have until sunset to leave town. After that, I can't guarantee your safety." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Blackwood? I'm giving you good advice. Take it." With that, he turned and strode out, his men following. Virginia sank into her chair, her hands trembling. She knew she should pack her things and leave, find another town, another position. But something in her rebelled at the thought of being driven away by a bully. With determined steps, she left the schoolhouse and headed for the mayor's office. Mayor Edwards listened to her account with growing discomfort, shifting in his chair and avoiding her gaze. "I'm sorry, Miss Porter, but there's not much I can do. Blackwood does own the building, and he has influence in town. So you'll do nothing. Allow him to deprive these children of an education because of a personal vendetta," the mayor sighed. "I'll speak with him, try to make him see reason, but I suggest you keep a low profile for a few days. Perhaps stay with one of the families outside town." Virginia left the mayor's office feeling defeated. As she walked back to the hotel, she noticed people watching her, whispering behind their hands. News traveled fast in San Elizario. In her room, Virginia began packing her belongings, tears of frustration threatening to fall. A knock at her door startled her. Opening it cautiously, she found Mrs. Wilson, the hotel proprietor's wife. "Miss Porter, there's someone asking for you downstairs. Says it's urgent." Virginia followed Mrs. Wilson down to find Sarah Thompson waiting in the lobby. "Miss Porter, I've come to offer you shelter," Sarah said without preamble. "My husband and I agree what Blackwood's doing isn't right. We have a spare room at our home. It's not much, but you'd be welcome." Virginia felt a surge of gratitude. "That's very kind, Mrs. Thompson, but I can't put your family at risk. Blackwood made it clear there would be consequences for those who help me." "Blackwood doesn't scare us," Sarah insisted, though her eyes betrayed her concern. "Besides, it would only be temporary until this blows over. Thank you truly. But I think it's best if I leave San Elizario, find another position elsewhere." Sarah looked crestfallen. "The children will miss you terribly. You've only been here a short time, but they've grown so fond of you, and I of them. But I won't be the cause of trouble for them or their families." As Virginia finished packing, another knock came at her door. This time, when she opened it, Zachary Ryder stood in the hallway, his expression grim. "I heard what happened," he said without greeting. "You can't leave," Virginia sighed. "I don't have much choice, Zach. Blackwood has made it clear I'm not welcome. Blackwood doesn't run this town, no matter what he thinks. He runs enough of it." Virginia gestured to her packed trunks. "I appreciate your concern, but this isn't your fight." Zach stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "It became my fight when he made it about me, about us having dinner together." "There is no us," Virginia pointed out, though her heart skipped at the word. "Maybe not, but I won't let him drive you out because of me." Zach paced the small room. "Come to my ranch, it's outside town limits." "Blackwood has no power there." Virginia stared at him, shocked by the suggestion. "I can't live at your ranch, Zach. It wouldn't be proper." "I have a cabin for the ranch hands. It's empty right now. You could stay there. No one would think anything of it." "Everyone would think something of it," Virginia countered. "My reputation is already in question because you had dinner with me instead of Blackwood," Zach finished. "At least at the ranch, you'd be safe." Virginia considered his offer. It was true that leaving Blackwood's sphere of influence would provide safety, but living on Zachary's property came with its own complications. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "Just for a few days," Zach pressed. "Give me time to talk to some people. Blackwood isn't as powerful as he thinks." Before Virginia could respond, the door burst open, and Harold Blackwood himself stood in the doorway, flanked by his two men. "Well, well," he drawled, taking in the scene. "Isn't this cozy, the schoolmarm and the rancher meeting in private?" Zach moved to stand between Virginia and Blackwood. "Get out, Blackwood. You've no business here." "I have business wherever I choose in this town, Ryder." Blackwood's gaze shifted to Virginia. "I thought I made myself clear, Miss Porter. You're not welcome in San Elizario." "And I thought I made myself clear," Virginia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I won't be bullied." Blackwood's face hardened. "Boys, help Miss Porter with her trunks. She's leaving town. Now." As the men moved forward, Zach blocked their path. "Touch her things and you'll regret it." One of Blackwood's men reached for his gun, but Zach was faster, drawing his own weapon with lightning speed. "Don't," he warned, his voice cold. Tension filled the small room as the men faced off. Virginia's heart raced, fear and anger warring within her. "This is madness," she said finally. "Mr. Blackwood, I'll leave peacefully. There's no need for violence." "Virginia, no," Zach protested. "It's my decision." She turned to Blackwood. "Give me until morning. I'll be gone by sunrise." Blackwood considered, then nodded. Sunrise, not a minute later. He gestured to his men and they backed out of the room. At the doorway, Blackwood paused. "And Ryder, this isn't over between us." After they left, Virginia sank onto the bed, her legs suddenly weak. "You can't give in to him," Zach insisted, holstering his gun. "What choice do I have?" "Stay and watch people get hurt because of me." Virginia shook her head. "It's not worth it." "You're worth it," Zach said quietly. "To the children. To the town, too." He stopped, looking away. Virginia felt a flutter in her chest. "Zach, I appreciate your concern, but I've made my decision." He nodded stiffly. "At least let me escort you to the next town, ensure you reach it safely." "Thank you, but no, I'll take the morning stage." Zach moved to the door, his expression unreadable. "If you change your mind, my offer stands. The ranch is 3 miles west. Follow the creek." After he left, Virginia finished packing, her heart heavy. As darkness fell, she tried to sleep but found herself tossing and turning, replaying the day's events in her mind. Near midnight, a soft tapping at her window startled her. Rising, she peered out to see Sarah Thompson's eldest son, William, a boy of 14. Virginia opened the window. "William, what are you doing here at this hour?" "Ma sent me, Miss Porter," the boy whispered. "Said to tell you to stay put. Don't leave your room till morning, no matter what you hear." "What's happening?" "Don't know exactly. Pa and some other men are meeting with Mr. Ryder, something about standing up to Blackwood." William glanced nervously over his shoulder. "I gotta go. Remember, stay inside." As the boy disappeared into the darkness, Virginia closed the window, her mind racing. What were Zach and the townspeople planning? Whatever it was, she doubted Blackwood would take it lightly. Virginia tried again to sleep, but gave up as the town clock struck 1. Rising, she moved to the window, peering out at the quiet street below. Everything seemed peaceful, but an underlying tension hung in the air, like the stillness before a storm. Suddenly, she noticed movement across the street, shadowy figures slipping between buildings. As she watched, more figures emerged, gathering in front of the saloon. Even from her window, Virginia could make out Zach's tall form at the center of the group. The door to the saloon burst open and Blackwood appeared, gun drawn. Words were exchanged, too distant for Virginia to hear, but the body language was clear confrontation. Virginia dressed quickly, torn between heeding William's warning to stay put and her concern for what was unfolding. As she debated, a flicker of light caught her attention. Fire had broken out at the rear of the saloon, flames licking up the wooden structure with alarming speed. Cries of "fire" echoed through the night as people poured from buildings. Virginia grabbed her shawl and rushed downstairs, ignoring Mrs. Wilson's protests. Outside, chaos reigned. Men formed a bucket brigade from the town well to the burning saloon, while women gathered children and valuables, ready to evacuate if the fire spread. Virginia searched the crowd for Zach, but couldn't spot him in the confusion. As she moved closer to the saloon, a hand gripped her arm. She turned to find one of Blackwood's men, the taller of the two who had accompanied him to her room. "Mr. Blackwood wants to see you," he growled. "Now, there's a fire." Virginia tried to pull away, but his grip tightened painfully. "Now." He began dragging her away from the crowd, toward a side street. Virginia opened her mouth to scream, but the man clapped his free hand over it. "Make a sound, and I'll knock you senseless." Terror coursed through her as he forced her down the dark street, away from the commotion of the fire. They reached a small stable at the edge of town, where the man shoved her inside and slammed the door. "Blackwood will be here soon," he informed her. "Don't try anything stupid." Virginia glanced around the dim interior, lit only by a single lantern hanging from a beam. The stable was empty save for some old tack and a few bales of hay. "Why am I here? What does Mr. Blackwood want?" the man sneered. "Guess he wants to say goodbye proper, like before you leave town." A cold dread settled in Virginia's stomach. She backed away as the man advanced toward her. "Mr. Blackwood said to keep you company till he gets here," he said, his intention clear in his eyes. Virginia's hand closed around a pitchfork leaning against the wall. "Stay back," she warned, raising it defensively. The man laughed. "Feisty, I like that." As he lunged for her, Virginia swung the pitchfork, catching him in the shoulder. He howled in pain, then struck her across the face with such force that she fell to the ground, the pitchfork clattering beside her. Before she could rise, he kicked it away and dragged her up by her hair. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, raising his fist. The stable door banged open, revealing Harold Blackwood, his face contorted with rage. "That's enough, Jenkins," he ordered. "Leave her to me." The man called Jenkins released Virginia, who stumbled back against the wall, her cheek throbbing from his blow. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. Blackwood approached her slowly, like a predator stalking prey. "You've caused me quite a bit of trouble, Miss Porter. My saloon is burning. Half the town is turned against me. all because you couldn't accept a simple dinner invitation." "I had every right to refuse," Virginia said, "and none of this justifies kidnapping me." "Kidnapping? This is just a conversation." Blackwood's smile was cold. "About consequences." Virginia glanced toward the door, calculating her chances of escape, but Jenkins stood guard, blocking the exit. "Your rancher friend thinks he can challenge me," Blackwood continued. "Gathering the townspeople, making demands. He seems particularly concerned about your welfare." "This isn't about Mr. Ryder, it's about you abusing your power," Blackwood laughed. "Power is meant to be used, Miss Porter. Those who have it shape the world, those who don't submit." "I will never submit to you," Virginia declared, though fear tightened her throat. Blackwood's expression hardened. "Then you'll serve as an example of what happens to those who defy me." He turned to Jenkins. "Lock her in. No food, no water. Let's see how long her spirit lasts." "You can't do this," Virginia protested as Jenkins grabbed her arms. "I already have." Blackwood opened a door at the back of the stable, revealing a small storage room with no windows. "Enjoy your new accommodations, Miss Porter." Jenkins shoved her inside, and Virginia stumbled, falling to her knees on the hard, packed dirt floor. The door slammed shut, and she heard the scrape of a bolt sliding into place, sealing her in darkness. Panic rose in Virginia's chest as the reality of her situation sank in. The storage room was tiny, barely 6 feet square, with walls of rough wooden planks. No windows, no light, and from the stale, musty smell, very little air circulation. She pounded on the door. "Let me out. You can't keep me here." Only silence answered her. Virginia pressed her ear to the door and heard muffled voices, Blackwood giving instructions to Jenkins, then footsteps moving away. After a moment, the outer door of the stable closed with a heavy thud. Virginia sank to the floor, her mind racing. How long did Blackwood intend to keep her here? Without water, she knew she couldn't survive more than a few days. And in this heat, dehydration would set in much sooner. She felt along the walls, searching for any weakness, any gap in the planks, but found nothing. The door was solid, the bolt on the outside beyond her reach. As the initial shock subsided, Virginia forced herself to think rationally. Someone would notice her absence. Zach would search for her. The Wilsons would raise an alarm when she didn't return to the hotel. But a chilling thought followed. What if everyone assumed she had simply left town as she'd said she would? Her trunks were packed. She'd told multiple people she was leaving at sunrise. Blackwood could easily spread word that she'd gone, and few would question it. Hours passed, marked only by Virginia's increasing thirst and the gradual shift from night to day, as thin slivers of light penetrated the cracks between the planks. The small room grew stifling as the sun rose, heat building to an almost unbearable intensity. Virginia tore a strip from her petticoat and pressed it against her dry lips, trying to soothe the cracking skin. Her head pounded, and dizziness washed over her whenever she tried to stand. By what she estimated was afternoon of the first day, Virginia heard the stable door open and footsteps approach. The bolt slid back and the door swung open to reveal Jenkins, a smirk on his face. "Still alive, I see," he commented. "Please," Virginia croaked, her voice barely audible. "Water." Jenkins laughed. "Boss says no water yet. Maybe tomorrow if you're willing to be more accommodating." Virginia's stomach turned at his implication. "I'd rather die of thirst. That can be arranged." Jenkins slammed the door shut again, plunging her back into near darkness. As the day wore on, Virginia drifted in and out of consciousness, her thoughts becoming disjointed. She dreamed of rain, of cool mountain streams, of the glass of water sitting on her nightstand at the hotel just out of reach. Night brought little relief from the heat. Virginia curled on the dirt floor, too weak now to call out. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her tongue swollen in her mouth. The symptoms of severe dehydration were setting in, and she knew she had perhaps another day at most before her body began to shut down. In her delirium, she thought of Zach, his gray eyes, his quiet strength, the way he'd stood up to Blackwood for her sake. She regretted not accepting his offer of sanctuary at his ranch. More than that, she regretted that she would never know what might have developed between them. The second day passed in a haze of pain and thirst. Jenkins checked on her once, seemingly disappointed to find her still alive. He offered no water, only crude taunts that Virginia barely registered in her weakened state by the third day, or was it the fourth? Virginia had lost track. Her condition had deteriorated severely. Her skin was hot and dry, her pulse rapid and weak. She could no longer stand, could barely move. Death, she realized with a strange detachment, was not far off. In what she believed might be her final hours, Virginia thought of her father, of the life she'd left behind in Boston, of the children in San Elizario who had so eagerly absorbed her teachings. She had wanted to make a difference, to build something meaningful. Now it seemed her life would end in this dark, airless room at the hands of a man whose pride she had wounded. As consciousness slipped away, Virginia became vaguely aware of commotion outside, raised voices, the thud of something heavy striking wood. Then a tremendous crash as the door to the storage room splintered inward. Light flooded in, blinding after days of darkness. Through the haze, Virginia saw a figure silhouetted in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, familiar. "Virginia." Zach's voice seemed to come from very far away. "My God, what has he done to you?" Strong arms lifted her, cradling her against a solid chest. Virginia tried to speak, but no sound emerged from her parched throat. "Get her water, quickly." Zach ordered someone beyond her field of vision. Moments later, the blessed relief of moisture touched Virginia's lips as Zach held a canteen to her mouth. "Slowly," he cautioned. "Just small sips at first." Virginia drank greedily despite his warning, the water painful against her cracked lips but life-giving to her dehydrated body. As her vision cleared, she saw that they were still in the stable, but now several people crowded the space. Sarah Thompson, the blacksmith, the mayor, and several others she recognized from town. "How?" Virginia managed, her voice a broken whisper. "We've been searching for you since you disappeared," Zach explained, his face tight with concern and barely controlled anger. "Jenkins got drunk last night at the new saloon, started bragging about how Blackwood was teaching the schoolteacher a lesson she wouldn't forget." Sarah Thompson approached, her eyes filled with tears. "We thought you'd left town, Miss Porter. Then William remembered seeing Jenkins drag you away the night of the fire." "Blackwood?" Virginia questioned weakly. Zach's expression darkened. "Gone. Rode out when he heard we were organizing a search party. Left Jenkins to keep watch on you." He glanced toward the door. "Jenkins won't be bothering anyone for a while." Virginia followed his gaze and saw Jenkins tied to a post, his face bloodied, the blacksmith standing guard over him. "We need to get her to a doctor," Sarah insisted, touching Virginia's forehead. "She's burning up." Zach nodded, rising with Virginia still in his arms. "I'll take her to my ranch. It's closer than town, and Dr. Miller is already there treating one of my hands." Virginia wanted to protest that she could walk, but the truth was she doubted she could stand. Instead, she leaned into Zach's strength, allowing herself to be carried out of the stable into the blinding sunlight of late afternoon. The town looked different somehow, or perhaps it was Virginia who had changed. Faces watched from windows and doorways as Zach carried her to his waiting wagon. Some expressed shock, others guilt or concern. Virginia wondered how many had known or suspected what Blackwood had done and said nothing. Zach placed her gently in the wagon bed, which had been lined with blankets. Sarah climbed in beside her, a canteen in hand. "I'll keep giving her water on the way," she assured Zach. "Small amounts like the doctor taught us during the drought." Zach nodded gratefully, then climbed onto the driver's seat and flicked the reins. The wagon lurched forward, every bump sending pain through Virginia's weakened body. "How long?" she asked Sarah, her voice still barely a whisper. Sarah understood. "4 days, Miss Porter." "That monster left you in there for 4 days without water." Virginia closed her eyes, tears seeping from beneath her lids. 4 days. No wonder she felt so near death. "Rest now," Sarah soothed, stroking Virginia's matted hair. "You're safe. No one will hurt you again." The journey to Starlight Ranch passed in a blur for Virginia. She drifted in and out of consciousness, accepting sips of water when offered, but otherwise remaining still, conserving what little strength remained in her body. When they arrived, Zach carried her into the main house, a modest but comfortable structure built of stone and timber. He placed her on a bed in what appeared to be a guest room, then stepped aside as an elderly man with spectacles examined her. "Severe dehydration," the doctor pronounced, his hands gentle as he checked Virginia's pulse. "Possibly heat stroke as well. She needs fluids, rest, and cooling." For the next several hours, Virginia was aware only of hands tending to her, bathing her face with cool cloths, helping her drink, changing her into a clean nightgown that must have belonged to Sarah or one of the other women from town. Night had fallen when Virginia finally woke fully, her mind clear though her body still painfully weak. The room was dimly lit by a single oil lamp, and Zach sat in a chair beside the bed, his head bowed as if in prayer or deep thought. "Zach," she whispered. His head snapped up, relief flooding his features. "Virginia, thank God." He moved to the edge of the bed, taking her hand in his. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of cattle," she admitted, attempting a smile. "But alive, thanks to you." Zach shook his head. "I should have found you sooner. If I'd known what Blackwood planned." "No one could have known," Virginia interrupted. "And you did find me. You saved my life. The doctor says you'll recover fully with time and care." Zach's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "You can stay here as long as you need." Virginia thought of the schoolhouse, of her students waiting for their lessons. "The children are fine. The town's organized temporary classes in the church, but they miss you." He hesitated. "Everyone does." Virginia squeezed his hand weakly. "Even you." Something flickered in Zach's eyes, vulnerability perhaps, or a deeper emotion he wasn't ready to name. "Especially me." A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Sarah Thompson entered, carrying a tray with broth and tea. "Miss Porter, you're awake." She set the tray on the bedside table. "The doctor said you should try to eat something light when you woke." As Sarah helped her sit up, propped against pillows, Virginia noticed the fatigue in the woman's face. "You've been here all this time," Sarah nodded. "My husband took the children home, but I stayed to help." Some of the other women too, taking turns. Gratitude welled in Virginia's heart. "Thank you, all of you." "It's what neighbors do," Sarah said simply. She turned to Zach. "You should rest too. You've been at her side since we brought her here." Zach looked ready to protest, but Virginia noticed for the first time the dark circles under his eyes, the stubble on his jaw heavier than usual. "She's right," Virginia told him. "I'll be fine with Sarah. Get some sleep." Reluctantly, Zach nodded. "I'll be just down the hall if you need anything." He rose, his hand lingering on hers for a moment before he left the room. Sarah helped Virginia with the broth, supporting the bowl when Virginia's hands proved too shaky to manage alone. As Virginia sipped the warm liquid, she felt strength gradually returning to her limbs. "Sarah," she said after a while, "tell me what happened. How did Blackwood get away with this? Sarah settled into the chair Zach had vacated, her expression grim. Most folks didn't know what he'd done. When you didn't show up for breakfast that morning, Mrs. Wilson assumed you'd left early for the stage as planned. Blackwood told anyone who asked that he'd seen you boarding the stage himself. And no one questioned it. Some did. Zach, for one. He rode to the next town when he heard, trying to catch up with you. When he couldn't find you on the road or at any of the stage stops, he knew something was wrong. That's when the search began, Sarah nodded. Zach rallied a group of men, my husband among them. They searched everywhere, but that old stable is on the outskirts of town, rarely used anymore. No one thought to look there until Jenkins let slip where you were. Virginia shuddered at the memory of her prison. And Blackwood, he truly escaped. For now, the sheriff from El Paso is involved now, they'll find him. Sarah's expression hardened. And when they do, he'll hang for what he did to you. Virginia wasn't certain how she felt about that. Justice, yes, but death. She pushed the thought aside, too exhausted to grapple with such moral complexities. You should rest, Sarah said, noting Virginia's drooping eyelids. Your body has been through a terrible ordeal. Virginia didn't argue. As Sarah dimmed the lamp and left the room, Virginia sank into the pillows, surrendering to the deep, healing sleep her body craved. Over the next few days, Virginia's strength gradually returned. She progressed from broth to solid foods, from sitting up in bed to short walks around the room, and finally to venturing onto the porch of Zach's ranch house, where she could sit in the shade and breathe the fresh air. Zach was a constant presence, attentive without hovering, concerned without being overbearing. Virginia learned more about him during those days of recovery than she had in all their previous encounters. He had come to Texas 10 years earlier, a young man of 22 with nothing but determination and a talent for working with horses. The card game that won him Starlight Ranch had been a turning point, giving him land but also tremendous responsibility. Through hard work and shrewd decision-making, he had built the ranch into a modest but successful operation. Why Starlight? Virginia asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. The first night I spent here, Zach explained, I slept outside because the house was in such disrepair. The sky was so clear, the stars so bright like nothing I'd seen before. It felt like a sign. Virginia smiled, understanding. A new beginning under a canopy of stars. Exactly. Zach glanced at her, his expression softening. Like finding you in time. Another new beginning. Heat that had nothing to do with the summer evening rose in Virginia's cheeks. Since her rescue, something had shifted between them, unspoken but palpable. A deepening connection, a growing trust, perhaps something more. As her recovery progressed, visitors from town began to arrive, Sarah with her children, bearing fresh bread and preserves. The mayor and his wife, awkwardly apologetic for their inaction. Students with handmade cards and wildflower bouquets. Each expressed relief at her recovery and hope for her return to teaching. A week after her rescue, Dr. Miller pronounced Virginia well enough to resume normal activities, though he cautioned against overexertion in the summer heat. What will you do now? Zach asked that evening as they walked slowly around the perimeter of his house, Virginia's arm linked through his for support. She had been pondering the same question. I should return to teaching. The children need stability, especially after everything that's happened. And you? What do you need? Virginia paused, considering. I need to finish what I started. I came here to build something, to make a difference. I won't let Blackwood take that from me. Zach's expression was one of admiration tinged with concern. The town would welcome you back with open arms. But after what happened? I refuse to live in fear, Virginia declared, though her heart quickened at the memory of her imprisonment. Besides, Blackwood is gone. The danger has passed. For now, Zach cautioned. But he has friends, allies, and he's a vengeful man. Virginia turned to face him directly. Are you suggesting I leave San Elizario after all? No. Zach took her hands in his expression earnest. I'm suggesting you stay here, at Starlight Ranch. Virginia blinked in surprise. Here, but that wouldn't solve anything. I'd still need to travel to town to teach. I could escort you. Or, Zach hesitated, then continued with determination, or you could teach here. There are children on neighboring ranches who can't make it to town regularly. They need education too. A rural school, Virginia considered the idea. It would be a challenge, but not impossible. She studied Zach's face, sensing there was more he wanted to say. But that's not really what you're asking, is it? Zach took a deep breath. No, it's not. Virginia, these past weeks finding you, almost losing you, watching you recover, they've shown me what truly matters. And what matters to me is you. Virginia's heart raced as Zach stepped closer, still holding her hands. I know it's sudden, he continued. I know you came west for independence, not to find a husband. But I can't imagine my life without you now. I don't want to. Zach, Virginia whispered, her voice catching. I'm not asking for an answer today, he assured her quickly. Only that you consider staying. Not just at the ranch, but with me. As my wife, when you're ready. Virginia felt tears welling in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of a joy so unexpected it overwhelmed her. In Boston, she had received proposals before, calculated offers from men seeking connections or fortune. But never had she been looked at the way Zach was looking at her now, as if she were the sun and stars combined. I don't need time to consider, she said softly. My answer is yes. Zach's expression transformed, disbelief giving way to radiant joy. Yes, truly. Virginia nodded, laughing through her tears. Truly, I love you, Zachary Ryder. I think I have since you fixed that squeaky schoolhouse door. Zach pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were precious beyond measure. I love you, Virginia Porter, more than I thought possible. When he kissed her, it was gentle yet passionate, a promise of all that was to come. Virginia melted into his embrace, feeling for the first time since arriving in Texas that she had truly found home. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at Starlight Ranch. The entire town turned out for the celebration, a show of support, and a declaration that Virginia was now one of their own, no longer an outsider but a beloved member of the community. As Virginia had hoped, she continued teaching, but in a new schoolhouse built on Starlight Ranch land, accessible to children from surrounding properties who had previously gone without formal education. Zach expanded the ranch, adding more cattle and horses, his success growing along with their happiness. 6 months after their wedding, news reached San Elizario that Harold Blackwood had been captured in New Mexico territory and would stand trial for kidnapping and attempted murder. Virginia testified at the trial, facing her tormentor with a courage that inspired admiration from all who witnessed it. Blackwood was sentenced to 20 years in territorial prison, effectively removing the shadow he had cast over Virginia's life and the town of San Elizario. As the seasons changed and a year passed, Virginia and Zach settled into the rhythms of ranch life together. The small schoolhouse flourished, with nearly 30 students attending regularly. Virginia introduced music and art alongside traditional subjects, creating a curriculum that nurtured the whole child. On their first anniversary, Zach surprised Virginia with a gift, a new sign for the ranch entrance. Where once it had read simply Starlight Ranch, it now proclaimed Starlight Ranch and School. It's perfect, Virginia said, leaning into his embrace as they admired the sign. A perfect symbol of our life together. Speaking of our life together, Zach began, a hint of nervousness in his voice, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. Virginia turned in his arms, curious. What is it? How would you feel about expanding our family? I was thinking the ranch could use a few more riders running around. Joy bubbled up in Virginia's chest. I think that's a wonderful idea, in fact. She took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. I think we've already started. Zach's eyes widened. We're going to have a baby. Virginia nodded, laughing at his expression of wonder. Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. Next spring, Starlight will welcome its newest resident. Zach swept her into his arms, spinning her in a circle of pure joy before setting her down carefully. A baby, he whispered, awe in his voice. Our baby. The first of many, I hope, Virginia said, thinking of the large family she had always dreamed of but had begun to think impossible after her father's death left her alone in the world. As many as you want, Zach promised, kissing her tenderly. We have all the time in the world. As the sun set over Starlight Ranch, painting the desert landscape in hues of gold and purple, Virginia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the Boston schoolroom to the San Elizario schoolhouse, from the darkness of Blackwood's prison to the light of Zach's love, every step, even the painful ones, had led to this moment of perfect happiness. Their story had begun with desperation and danger she locked away without water, he breaking down the door to carry her to safety. But it had transformed into something beautiful and enduring, a love as vast as the Texas sky and as steadfast as the land they now called home. The following spring, Virginia gave birth to a healthy son they named James after her father. The boy had Zach's gray eyes and Virginia's auburn hair, a perfect blend of both parents. As the years passed, Starlight Ranch prospered, and the Ryder family grew. 2 years after James came Elizabeth, a fiery little girl with a spirit to match her mother's. 3 years later, twins Thomas and William completed their family, bringing joy and chaos in equal measure. Virginia continued teaching, eventually training other teachers to assist as the school expanded to accommodate the growing population of ranching families in the area. Her innovative methods and dedication earned recognition throughout the territory, and educators from as far as Santa Fe came to observe her techniques. Zach's ranching business thrived as well. He bred some of the finest horses in the region, and the Starlight brand became known for quality and fair dealing. The modest ranch house expanded to accommodate their growing family, but never lost its warmth and welcoming atmosphere. Sometimes at night, when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Virginia and Zach would sit on the porch beneath the vast canopy of stars that had given their home its name. They would hold hands, remembering how close they had come to never finding each other, how a cruel act intended to break Virginia's spirit had instead led her to the greatest love of her life. You ever regret coming to San Elizario? Zach asked her one such evening, 20 years after she had first stepped off the stagecoach. Virginia considered the question, thinking of all she had endured, all she had built, all she had loved. Not for a single moment, she answered truthfully. Every step brought me here to you, to our children, to this life. How could I regret any of it? Zach squeezed her hand, his touch as reassuring now as it had been when he had first carried her from that dark prison into the light. I thank God every day that you're as stubborn as you are brave. Virginia laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. And I thank God every day that you're as determined as you are kind. Above them, the stars of the Texas night sky shone like diamonds scattered across black velvet, witnesses to a love that had been forged in adversity, but had flourished in the freedom of the open range. A love that, like the Starlight Ranch itself, had grown from humble beginnings into something enduring and beautiful. And Virginia Porter Ryder, who had once been locked away without water, who had been carried to safety in the arms of a cowboy, knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in a place, but in a person, in a family, in a love that would last all the days of her life.